Hey there, it's Tony here, and welcome to episode 45, I believe we're at. 45 of the Dumb Leaders podcast. And as promised, we are looking at the winning speech from Scott Morrison from the federal election here on the 18th of May. And vastly different to the one that we dissected last week with Bill Shorten. But after we've had a look at Scott ScoMo, as he's apparently affectionately called here in Australia, Scott Morrison's speech, we'll also have a look at something that made the news this week, and it's something that maybe indicates that Bill Shorten's not quite happy enough to be sitting there on the backbench. So he has been named in the shadow ministry for the Labor Party in opposition. And a speech that he made this week has certainly made the news. So we'll have a look at that. But first we'll have a look and we'll have a listen and we'll dissect Scott Morrison's winning speech.
Your message to the Australian people. I'm just about to deliver it.
So we start the speech with Scott Morrison walking into this crowded room. He's quizzed by a journalist, what have you got to say to the Australian people? And then he says, I'm just about to deliver it. And then what followed was like 4 minutes of adulation, like a rock star welcome. Now, so in the interests of your sanity, I've actually taken that out. And we're going to catch up with Scott just as he's coming up on stage. And once again, I made the point last week. Do we really want our politicians to be treated like rock stars, or do we really want them to be humble and hardworking for the Australian community? I don't know. You tell me. So there we go. We've got this friends thing happening again. Just as Bill started his speech, in his concession speech, we've got ScoMo or Scott Morrison starting his speech in relation to, we're all friends here.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you, friends.
Can I just start by saying, as you know, a little while ago, Mr. Shorten contacted me, and I thank him. I thank him very much in the spirit in which he made that call, and I thank him very much for his kind remarks to me and to Jenny and to our family, and I would like to wish him and Chloe and his family all the best and God's blessings.
So, a gracious way to start the speech. He stumbled over his words a little bit there, but, at the end of the day, this is a victory that he didn't expect, so he probably wasn't expecting to talk in the way that he did, but gracious that he he's acknowledged Bill and the family. So
I have always believed in miracles.
Now that's a really interesting way to kick off a winning speech. Was he expecting to lose? Was there an expectation around the LNP that this was not going to be their election? So really, really interesting. But what's also happened, and this is something that has sort of happened as an aside, is that in the last week of the election, Bill Shorten brought religion into the campaign, where Bill sort of chastised Scott Morrison in relation to a topic that's been going around in Australia, the Israel Folau Instagram post, where he sort of quoted the Bible, and in today's inclusive society, pretty much told everyone that they're going to hell. And so Bill made an election, a political point in relation to it, when Scott Morrison was asked for his opinion and provided that opinion. Bill politicised it by saying could he categorically state that people aren't going to go to hell? And really it was one of those really poor, inconceived ideas from Bill there to politicise something that should never have been politicised. And as a result of that, we've sort of seen this secondary thing come through within the Australian population, where, you know, faith-based communities have latched on to the Bill comment in relation to, you know, going to hell, and ultimately, if the debate's not necessarily whether there is a hell or not in so many eyes, but it's who assigns that to you, and it's certainly not going to be Scott Morrison. But interestingly enough, that same faith-based community have really latched on the concept that Morrison talked about, saying it's a miracle. And so there's been a bit of a, I would say, resurgent in the faith-based communities based around the attempt from Bill to politicise religion. Just more cheering.
I'm standing with the three biggest miracles in my life here tonight. And tonight we've been delivered another one.
Once again, just, a bit of an overuse. Fair enough if it's a shock victory, but, I think that, ultimately we shouldn't be looking at the election victory as a miracle. It was probably... He talks about it a little bit later on in what it really is.
How good is Australia?
Yeah, it's not too bad.
And how good are Australians?
Yep, once again, we're pretty good.
This is the best country in the world in which to live. And it's those Australians that we have been working for the last 5.5 years since we came to government under Tony Abbott's leadership back in 2013.
So, without being cynical, I mean, since 2013, we've seen Tony Abbott, we've seen Malcolm Turnbull, and then we've seen Scott Morrison. So, ultimately, there would be a very clear it's a minority, but it's a large minority within Australia that probably would suggest that the government's not working for them. And so, once again, to make some statements and some claims about that, well, that's the euphoria of the moment, I guess. But ultimately, there's probably a lot to suggest they still need a long way to go to make sure that they're governing for all Australians.
It has been those Australians who have worked hard every day. They have their dreams, they have their aspirations. To get a job, to get an apprenticeship, to start a business, to meet someone amazing, to start a family, to buy a home, to work hard and provide the best you can for your kids.
So, at the end of the day, it's probably a really good, apt description of what most Australians are looking for or aspiring to. But in our changing world, there's more of a concept now around sharing. Whether it's sharing an Uber or it's the sharing of resources. We even see things like garages now being booked out to people being able to rent somebody else's garage, So there is a greater concept now around sharing and the greater good, and none of that was encapsulated in what Morrison's talking about.
To save for your retirement and to ensure that when you're in your retirement that you can enjoy it because you've worked hard for it. These are the quiet Australians who have won a great victory tonight.
And once again, I'm just going to go back to some of the commentary in relation to the last couple of podcasts, is that, yes, it is the quiet Australians that have spoken, the people that have been hounded out of conversations by being called racist, rednecks or bigots or whatever else, homophobes, it comes up. So it's those people that are out of the conversation. They're not talking. And in many ways, actively probably planting seeds that aren't there when they're run by pollsters and the like. But it's those quiet Australians that brought victory to the coalition. It wasn't a miracle. And as we go again, we've got more adulation and more rock star chanting.
Thank you. Because it's always been about them. It's always been, for those of you watching this at home tonight, for me and for my government, for all of my team, it's all about you. Tonight is not about me, or it's not about even the Liberal Party. Tonight is about every single Australian who depends on their government to put them first. And so, friends, that is exactly what we are going to do. Our government will come together after this night and we will get back to work, just as Gladys Berejiklian got back to work here in New South Wales.
Now, I'm not sure of the actual reference there, but why he felt the need to say that. But the return of the Conservatives into New South Wales was another victory that sort of went against the polls. So, but I'm still not quite convinced why he needed to put that. Yes, he was talking in Sydney. Yes, he was talking to a New South Wales crowd. But Australia was watching. So, you know, most of the Australians, unfortunately, probably wouldn't even know who that person was.
Just a few months ago. And that is our task, and that is my undertaking to Australians from one end of the country to the other. I said that I was going to burn for you, and I am, every single day. So let me talk about some of our other miracles tonight.
So let's double down on the miracles, shall we? Let's just double down on the miracles. And Scott Morrison, for the next 8 or 9 minutes, goes on to share the people that won their seats against the odds, and, you know, thanking the other party, that the National Party who formed the coalition, because he didn't mention that earlier. But ultimately, there's like 8 minutes of thanking people, and, you know, fair enough, but you don't need to listen to that.
So, friends, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do. And we're going to get back to work. We're going to get back to work for the Australians that we know go to work every day, who face those struggles and trials every day. They're looking for a fair go, and they're having a go, and they're going to get a go from our government.
And seriously, I'd really like to think that everyone in Australia will get a fair go, and that there is that opportunity to start to, you know, take steps on some of the areas that we need to take steps on. And already, funnily enough, we've seen a lot of the right-wing commentators starting to talk about things like what a mistake it would be for the government to start doing more around the climate, and starting to stray away from their basis. And I think that's wrong. I just think that's wrong, because, you know, ultimately this is a really good opportunity for this government to show that they are willing to govern for all Australians and for the future of Australia. And that future includes some sort of action around some of those things that some of the people on the right side of politics don't necessarily want to acknowledge. So we need to get better in some of those areas, humanity areas. We need to do more in respect of our Indigenous traditional owners. We need to do much more. A simple place to start would be to change the national anthem and get some of our great songwriting genius that goes around our Australian nation now to put something together that's representative of all of us. I think that would be a really good place to start. And we do need to acknowledge that humans have had an impact on the earth. I mean, it's ridiculous to think otherwise. It's, we go from an earth that was pristine before humans, and now we've got bitumen roads, we've got steel cities, whatever. But we need to acknowledge that and start to make some sense going forward. So it's an opportunity I see that the government can be doing. Whether they will or not, whether they'll listen to the right-wing commentators will be a thing or two to note.
Every single day, they are who we'll have right in front of us as we put in place and continue the policies which we know will keep our economy strong, to guarantee the essentials that Australians rely on, that'll keep Australians safe and secure, and most importantly, that will keep Australians together. We are an amazing country of amazing people. God bless Australia.
So he finished with that whole concept of unity and giving kudos to the people of Australia and what an amazing country. And then once again, just there's been that whole change swell of, was there a need for that God bless Australia? I'm not sure. So, but ultimately that was the speech, and that was the speech. It's gone down in history. ScoMo won the election, and that was the way that he acknowledged that. So, that speech itself, once you get rid of all the self-adulation, the rock star welcome, and the 8 or 9 minutes of thanking people, at the end of the day, it's about 5 minutes. So whether that gives us any sort of relevance as to what we can face, I'm not sure. But what we can do now is have a listen to our good friend Bill Shorten, the former Labor leader who lost the unlosable. So, and the reason why I want to share this is because obviously last week we looked at the concession speech from Bill. And I made a comment that he's in pain, and he made that comment, I'm hurting, and, everyone here is hurting. And it probably gave us a bit of a precursor as to exactly what that hurt meant for Bill, because I think we saw it this week. And in a speech that Bill gave at a Labor caucus meeting, I think it gave us a real indicator of who Bill really blames for the election loss.
But obviously we were up against corporate leviathans, a financial behemoth, spending unprecedented hundreds of millions of dollars, advertising, telling lies, spreading fear. They got what they wanted. Powerful vested interests campaigned against us through sections of the media itself, and they got what they wanted. But friends, in the end, all of us are only passing through, and each of us has a responsibility to think big, to think boldly, to leave this place better than we found it. I'm lucky to look forward to serving alongside all of you. Thank you very much.
And interesting that Bill was appointed as a shadow minister. Now, that speech gives a real indicator that he's really not wearing any of the blame from the election defeat. He's just not accepting it. He blames everyone else. And it's really interesting to hear him use that language. And seriously, I mean, if they want to reconnect back to their blue-collar workforce, using a word like leviathans, a financial behemoth, is not going to do that, Bill. So once again, you've just lost it. You've just lost the opportunity to be gracious, humble, and serve the people that want to be served by you. So, and blaming powerful vested interests who campaign against us. Wow! What happened on your side, Bill? You had the Greens, you had Get Up, you had the union movement, all powerful things in their own right, campaigning against the other side. Telling lies, as you say. So it's one thing to shoot the arrow at one side of politics, but it's another completely to misrepresent and be misguided around the reality around your side of politics. The reason why Labor lost largely lies in the complicated policy reform platform that they put forward by you. That is it. If that was a simpler process, if that was a very simpler process that focused on 3 key areas, as opposed to the complex way that you were taking money of hard-working, retiring Australians to pay for this, you would be in power now, Bill. So take the blame, take the lesson, and if we've heard right, you still have designs on the Labor leadership. And all I can say at the moment, based on current results, is that is really good news for the coalition, the other part, because Australians, unfortunately, Bill, have knocked you back. And whether you accept that or not, it's a lesson there that you should learn. Hey, it's Tony here. It's episode 45. I'm back next week. We're moving away from politics. I've had my say. I've shared my opinion. I hope you've learned something. I'm not sure. If you disagree, that's fine. Many people have. We've seen that in our emails and some of the private messages that we've received. People certainly have disagreed, but we've also had some people that have taken the time to say pretty spot on. Well done. So next week we will be back. We'll be back sharing some stories from our readers around dumb leaders. I've had enough of talking about Australian political dumb leaders. So we'll catch you next week. See you then.